Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon Amiga Playguide and review. This time it's Deuteros. The next Millennium, developed by Ian Bird and published by Activision in 1991. Pressing that left mouse button, it begins of course with a space intro. Deuteros, the next Millennium, is actually the sequel to Millennium Return to Earth, otherwise known as Millennium 2.2, which came out in 1989 and was published by Electric Dreams. Both of the games were coded by Ian Bird, and Ian Bird apparently comes from somewhere near Southampton, and he went on to The Little Mermaid 2 and Lilo and Stitch for Disney, so he moved on to America and had lots of hits over there. And the graphics were Jai Redman, who also worked on Millennium Return to Earth, and the music was Matt Bates. So we don't know what happened to Ian Bird, but you might guess that this is an American game because this is published by Activision, so perhaps he'd already moved over to America by this point, and that's why this game is NTSC compatible. Maybe it's even NTSC. But apart from that, once you get through all that introduction, you get a choice of languages. We'll select English, and you can see copyright 1991 I.R. Bird, English version 1. And we're hanging around Earth at the moment in the vicinity of the sun. We can see the date at the bottom, and we can see various options on the screen. My favourite, blank buttons. So unlabelled buttons, you can see by waving our mouse pointer over those, it pops up with some indication of what they are, and by clicking on them we can then move to that screen. So just like Supremacy that we saw, we're going to have to get used to what all these buttons do. And materials and goods, we have 0 derricks at the moment, and so we're going to have to produce something. We've got one mining rig on the surface of this planet Earth, and you can see what kind of materials that it's actually mining, and you can see at the top of the screen it will tell us where we are and what we're actually looking at, so when we cycle down we can click on them and we know what they are. But the most important thing is to go into the recruitment section first of all, and let's recruit all of the base research staff, the production staff, and all the space marines as well that we can at this point, and then by advancing time those will eventually add to our staff on planet Earth. But at the moment we can only develop one thing. We've only got one thing, that's the mining rig, and by clicking on that it says the shortages of iron and titanium and carbon, so those will have to be acquired before you can build anything. And you can see other items as well. Unfortunately we haven't got a leader who's qualified to make any of these items yet, and we haven't researched them either. So at the start of the game all you can do is mine various things off the planet, and you won't need anything to collect them. We'll just need a basic mining rig. And so whilst we are waiting for our very first task to appear, i.e. the engineers, what can we do? Well, we can actually create a derrick of our own, and that will mean that the picture in the middle changes, a little wavy line moves, and also the picture there on the left will change as that gets built. And that can be built as standard on all of our bases once we get bases, and it's very slow to build that unless we get a leader. So here we go, our first apprentice cousin is there. We've got 99 staff with cousins, and so the longer he is there in the development bay, the more experience he'll get, and the quicker it will be to build things. So we've got the one derrick now built, and that means we can drop that off. It calls it a derrick and a mining rig, which is somewhat confusing, but we can now drop that off on the planet's surface. So we've now got two going, and you can see in the development bay we've got Mr. Wright. He's a technician and he's got 99 staff. So what can we do? We can click on the next one in the line, and now the technician staff will develop whatever we've got selected. And it's a good idea to develop everything that we can at the beginning of the game and get those staff moving, and having developed them we can then build whatever it is developed. So here is a chassis. I think it's a shuttle chassis, S chassis, and we'll need that to develop shuttles, of which we'll be developing quite a few, and also all the other little bits that go into making a shuttle. The shuttle drive, you can see, is the engines at the back of that thing, and we're also going to need hydrogen fuel as well, and hydrogen methanol fuel is being researched at the moment, and of course that takes ages. You can see the date at the bottom of the screen moving forwards, and so by moving forward in time we can research those things, and then we can produce them or whatever. But you can see the fuel, as long as we have methane on the planet's surface and hydrogen, we can then mix those together to create our fuel, and that will happen automatically, slowly but surely, as we accrue these different types of things. You can see MEH fuel at the bottom. We've got one pilot of our Marines, is called Lennox, and the pilot will stay in the shuttle bay until we've invented a shuttle, and then we can put him in there. So in the shuttle bay, as long as we have the raw materials, we can click on the box at the top, and that will create the head of the shuttle. We can then put the pilot in there, and then in the body, well, we can choose what body we want. Out of 3 available, all of those will have to be researched, and all of those will have to be built. And then the tail, you saw that we researched the tail, so we can let's put the tail on. And it's a bit juddery, these graphics. It's the version of WinUAE that I used last year. It's a bit juddery, but you can see the MEH, the mare fuel, we can put 1 gallon or whatever it is, 1 metric ton into there at the moment. We'll have to develop that, and that will slowly flow into our fuel tank on the surface of the Earth, and then we can pour that into the shuttle. So everything takes ages in this game. It's an absolute grind, let's say that from the kick-off. But now that we've developed all of these apparatus, we can now build them, and we can equip our first shuttle. You can see it's on the ground, and there it is. That's the internals of the shuttle bay. We've got a crew inside of it, and we can click on something to service the ship, or we can click on the shuttle bay itself, and you can see that we've also got the artisans in there again that we developed, and we also have a number of pilots as well. So at the moment we've got some titanium in there, and at the moment, well, copper, we can put things in and take things out of the shuttle, and at the moment I don't think we have anything at all in our base. We'll probably need to use the shuttle to fly down to the surface of the Earth, perhaps, and to get those, I'm not quite sure. So let's see what we do in this case. We've fitted an empty pod, and that's got no derricks in there and no frames. Okay, so an empty pod is useful because we can put things in there, including, let's see what we've got, tools and equipment, and orbital factory. Well, we'll definitely need that a bit later on, and number of frames. Well, that's a frame. Let's develop a frame, and we'll definitely find out what that does a bit later on. Let's fast forward that time, and that graphic expands as soon as we've got a frame. So a frame is actually hospitable unit, and we can use that frame to create bases. So we've now got 1 frame in the shuttle pod. We've put that in there, and then that will appear of frame. I've no idea what that means, but we've got 1 frame in there, and now we've got a frame in the shuttle pod. What can we do? We can take off from the base for a start, and that will reveal where we are, and hopefully it will. And we are, looks like we've got a shuttle pod, we're climbing from our base, we've got a frame, we're around Earth, we've got fuel in there, and we've got a pilot in there, the engine is engaged. So what can you do? Well, we can develop another frame whilst we're waiting, and we can also maybe even develop another shuttle as well, but we can only have one active, it says, any given time. So the icon that looks a bit like a dead mouse is actually the shuttle, and you'll have to click on that. So here we are, we're now in orbit around the planet. So what can we do about that? Equipment pod activate, and we've got the pod and we've clicked on the button on the dashboard, and we're now getting a bulletin, and we've now made designs for an interplanetary spacecraft. Unfortunately it's quite large and it's going to take ages to develop, and the IOS, whatever that is going to take ages, but once we've researched that, that means we can get off the station. So here we are, this is Earth. We've got incomplete factory, 1 of 8 built. So that was the one frame that we built and took that into orbit. That's our new space station, and once we've got a space station then things can really kick off. But for now, let's return the shuttle back to Earth, and whilst we're on Earth, let's now build another frame, and once that's built, that will go into our stores, and we'll have to build them one at a time in this particular case, but that will change a bit later on. When the shuttle returns with its empty pod, we can now fit it with another frame again, and you notice we can even fit that with derricks as well, but we're not going to need to transfer mining rigs off the surface of the planet. So once you've done all that and developed all them, you can now activate the pod in space. That will deploy, that will build the rest of our space station. We've now put 8 of them up there, and now that says the factory is up there. So we can now click on the buttons. We've now got that complete. An icon there is now complete, and we can click on that and check it out. We've now got a space station. It's not doing anything at the moment. It's not got any raw materials. It's not got any goods either. So we're going to have to put things in there before we can get the space station active, and that means we're going to have to put in another set of engineers, and they're the blue guys that you saw that we invented, and the yellow guys, you only need to invent one of those, and I think the inventors stay on planet Earth and that's all you need. So you can see that we have got a lot up there that we can build now, and we can only build the IOS in space. We can't build that on planet Earth, and so we're going to have to invent that. And so we've got IOS there. Unfortunately we're going to have to invent all the parts for that, and so our space station, now that we've got it built, will come in handy. All this is happening in real time, so what we get to view is what's happening in real time wherever we are. So let's land again, speed up time, and now we can see the empty docking bay. Click on the empty vessel, and what do we need to put in now? Well, a crew, so we'll need to put in a habitation unit for that. That's the thing that looks like a bit of a brain, and that dome-like brain is simply human habitation, and in there we can put things in it. So what do we want to put things in it? Well, the artisans, the technicians first of all. We've already got pilots, we can move those pilots up there, and for now let's move the artisans in there, and it says it's moved. We can develop a number of those from the elevator room that we saw, so it looks like we've developed 3 of those. One of the engineers you can see is already in our base, so that's one set of the engineers, and we'll also get some more engineers as well. By clicking on those, it will swap them round in the habitation pod, and it will also swap them round in the base on planet Earth as well. So you can see we can swap them in, and then once we're happy with the one that we want, the most experienced one or the least experienced one, we can then drop it in, and now the artisans are now in that living compartment. That we're now freed up, so we've used both of our artisans. Now we can take off again back to our orbital base, and guess what, we can now dock with that thing and take some time. And now finally, once we've docked, we can now deploy by clicking on the brain symbol on the bottom, or we can go to the docking bay itself and click on it, which is more active, and you can click on that and they will go into the stores in our docking bay. So now from there we can click on them out of the stores in the docking bay, and that means they will go into the development area, the technician area, the engineers that we need to start developing new stuff. And again, we're going to have to research that new stuff before we can develop it, but having researched it, there are a few things that we can only develop and get built in space. So let's have a look. These are new things that we've got which pop up as soon as we advance the story mode. So we've got the IOS, which is the orbital, well, it's the interplanetary drive basically, which gets us around the solar system. We've got a shuttle, but we'll need to get around the solar system, and then we'll need to build a bigger ship after that to get us out of the solar system. So you can see various things, and it even tells us what we need to manufacture those. Everything will need raw materials that we're mining on the planet's surface of Earth. We'll just grab those straight away. So let's dump a load of rigs off on the surface of planet Earth, and unfortunately we're going to have to carry those one by one from the surface of the planet to the space station where we are at the moment. You can see we can build the IOS, we can build an auto cargo computer, and the leader must be rated expert, unfortunately, to wield it. And so we've now got abilities that we can have. We can now got auto computer as well. Once we've got the auto building computer into the space station, it means we can take the artisans out there. They're no longer needed because the auto builder will now build anything for us without any human intervention. So we've taken the artisans out of there, and we've got some copper, and we're going to have to transfer copper from the surface up to the space station using the shuttle the long way, and that means more grinding. But once you've got the basic raw materials, it means we can now start to build stuff. And later on we'll get an automatic computer so the shuttle does that for us automatically. For now we're going to have to do it the manual way. So you can see on planet Earth we've now researched everything that we need to research. It's all green. So now we've researched the IOS, and we've built the IOS, it looks like, and the IOS has got 1, 2, 3 compartments instead of the shuttle, which has only got 1. The IOS means we can get away from planet Earth now. We can start exploring the solar system, and so for this I'm putting some grapples in there that I've invented, and the grapples are useful because you can use those to grab asteroids that are floating around. And we've got some Mahen fuel. Well, let's put some in there. We'll need the same amount of fuel every time if you want to fill that up, so it's usually a huge load amount that you're going to have to wait for. And so it looks like we've only got 2 left. We've got Darcy, who's a basic pilot, so let's use him. And the longer that they are using this spacecraft, of course, the more they'll get trained up. So now we've got a big spaceship. And the big spaceship, we can now click on the set course function at the bottom of the screen. That brings up the solar system. You can see the sun is there, there's no point going there. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt as well. And by clicking on whatever it is, we can then zoom in and check out the bodies which circle around the planet. Sometimes we can click on the planet itself and land on it, but if it's a gas giant we're not going to be able to do that. That simply takes us back. And so we'll need to watch out for all these planets, we'll need to investigate them, and there's also the asteroid belt as well. So we've just selected course, and it's saying we've got some fuel. It's not maximum, but we've got some fuel in. We've got the grapples, we've got pilot Darcy, we've got the course set towards the asteroids. Now we can press the engage button, which is flashing. That's the only thing that is flashing at the moment, and that will mean we can engage the hyperdrive and get moved on towards that target, which in this case is an asteroid belt. So you're seeing a live play of me playing this game. This is not pre-recorded. This is maybe hours and hours, maybe 6 or 7 hours condensed into one, whatever it was. So we're now watching back that footage, and you can see, well, unfortunately I think the grapples require us to rank up or something like that to be able to use them. And we can now see that we're now Captain Harris. So now that we're Captain, we've ranked up by transferring that from the shuttles. We can now activate the grabber, and it says activating the scanner. The scanner has found some copper, and if it's small enough to be grabbed by the grabber, I think it can handle maybe 250 tons at maximum. Then we can grab it if it's too big. If it's 600, well, 60,000 tons. Unfortunately, it's too big. We're not going to be able to grab it. But there are certain materials that we can't get on Earth, like platinum and palladium and things like that, so we'll have to find them. And here is some platinum. Let's grab it. You can see the various icons tell us what we're actually doing, and we can now scan those asteroids and we can grab something and we can bring that back. Once we brought it back, we can click on it and that will break up whatever we've got. We've got some platinum that we need, and what is in here, we've managed to find some silver. So maybe that's just a quick way of dumping items onto our space station, and some silica as well. Pretty meaty, so we've now dumped those in. This is now the materials that we've got on our space station, which is quite a number, and we'll need quite a lot of them. The green ones are okay, the red ones are running out. So you can see we've fitted now an auto cargo computer onto our shuttle, and now that means that it will automatically go down to the planet's surface and pick things up for us. So let's drop off the carbon that we've picked up manually by forcing it to go down there and picking that up from the planet's surface. And now let's go down to that planet's surface again so that we can set up that automatic computer. And you don't have to do that, but it just makes it a bit easier. So ordinarily, this is the service module, the inspection pod. This is where we can put our raw materials, usually by clicking on them and ferrying them up to the surface. But you can now see a new light, supply computer. So that means we can now take things from the surface. You can see surface is written in green, and whatever we select will now be picked up. And orbit is written in brown on the other side of the screen. That means if we want to take things from the orbital station and drop those on planet Earth, that will drop those down on planet Earth. So at the moment I'm selecting aluminium just to test that out, and that should mean if we speed up time, that shuttle will automatically, there you go, take off and drop all the aluminium that we need onto the space station. It doesn't take that much time. It will automatically set off, it will automatically refuel as well. So now that we've got the ACC, the automatic collection computer, cargo computer, that's great. Means that can be left to do that. And you can see a band-aid. This is useful for repairing stations. We're going to need a band-aid because we want to fly to the moon, and on the moon there is a station that we can repair, and the band-aid is only useful to repair that station on the moon. So let's select it. We're now at Earth and now engaged, and hopefully now we're around the moon. So let's deploy again our servicing pods, and that will create a space station. We've now got an IOS, so it's bigger, and it means that we can have up to 3 pods activated at once. That means it's fewer trips. We've now got 8 pods activated. That means we've got a space station now around the moon. Yet again, it's an empty space station. There's nothing in it. There's no body in it. It can't do anything. So we're going to have to move the engineers into this place, get the goods in there, the raw materials, and we'll need to build an automatic computer as well. So let's dump the artisans in to this place. Let's ferry the artisans up to the moon. Now that we've got a base floating around the moon, we can now dump them in the engineering department, and we'll need to ferry in the materials that we need to build the automatic computer so that those artisans can be taken out again. So we can't fly down to the surface at the moment. We haven't even got a shuttle pod built, but we can build a shuttle pod as long as we've got those raw materials. And we can't go to the surface without a shuttle pod. So I'm returning with those raw materials. The main ones, of course, are iron and copper, and the game will even tell you if you find those and build them, it will tell you what raw materials that you need if you go into the technician's office on planet Earth. So have developed enough and taken enough to the moon, we've now built a band-aid so we can put that on to our shuttle pod, and hopefully now that we've got a shuttle pod we're going to need some crew to fly it as well, and once we've got a crew hopefully we can now descend to the planet's surface, and now that we've got the band-aid we can deploy that. And that will now activate. That means you can see both of our space stations are on our computer telling us what they are, and the thing with the arrow on it is actually our IOS, our interplanetary drive spaceship. So by clicking around on the various places you can see we are now hopefully the moon colony, it says right at the bottom, and so we'll have to get some raw materials into that place and develop some derricks, and then we can start mining now the surface of the moon. So the band-aid is only used on that one specific mission to kickstart the moon off, and once we've got the moon now that will appear as a base we can now go there, and now that we've used the band-aid we're not going to need that for the rest of the game. So let's just pick up using our big thing, lots of things to drop off. Let's drop off a whole load of derricks because you can drop off 8 derricks at once, and so let's drop those off. And in order to drop those off on the surface we can drop those off all together, 8 derricks into our one shuttle pod, which is great. Let's land, and now those 8 derricks hopefully we can drop those off onto the surface, deploy them. So we've now got 8, and that's the maximum we can carry per body, so 8, definitely have those on the surface of the Earth as soon as possible, and on the moon as soon as possible. And once you've got the automatic computer going, it's saying surface of the moon going into orbit, you want everything that the moon can offer, and you want to send it all up to the orbit, and it will take its time moving through them one by one. You click on the button that looks like a waveform and that will set off, and it's climbing, and it will also pick up some mare fuel as well if there's anything on the surface, and it will select the items one by one and pile those into the docking bay on the moon, and it will put those into the equipment thing so we can start buying some more equipment. So that's now fine. We've now got an IOS, another IOS, you can rename those at your leisure, so let's call that War 2. And we've got a lot of frames on board. It looks like we've developed 4 of them. Now that we've got a few of those space stations, we're moving forward in time. War 3, and we're going to have to make war in this game, and it takes a long time to build it up. This is several arrows into the game that we've actually got this for. So you can see that we've got some aluminium and some titanium on that one, and it's floating around the moon at the moment, and it even tells you where they are. So let's go off to another planet, and we've got Callisto, Europa, Io, Leader. Well, it's pretty difficult to choose which one, but according to the guides that I have read, Leader is one of the best things to go to early in the game, and then you can start mining that. So let's do that. Let's set off to Leader as our first priority. We've got some frames as well to start building that space station, so let's set them all off towards Leader, some aluminium, titanium, and that means all in one go all those things will arrive at the destination. When it does, the picture will change, and then you can click on the icons at the bottom to start deploying the orbital pods. Once you've got the station you can start piling the materials in there and the artisans, and then you can build the automatic computer, and then once you've got that going you can start building some more frames, and you can also start another shuttle, and then you can hopefully deploy that onto the surface. So that's the station section 2 complete, so that should mean we've got a surface now on the planet Leader, and it's still surveying at the moment. So now we've got a shuttle all built and a space station all built. We have got a station on the planet and that's all going, so that's fine. And we've now got some derricks as well, so let's take those down in the shuttle manually down to the planet's surface, deploy them, and now that we've done that, hopefully now that's Leader all set up with 8 rigs, and that means that these materials, including palladium and gold and titanium, will now be harvested. So that's fantastic. That's a new colony set up, and you can see the colonies now starting to pile up, and you can see the news bulletins of people that are now ranking up all over our system. We can also click on the interactive button so we can check out various places, and that'll tell us what they contain. Obviously Leader is one of the best places because that contains a lot of materials that we're going to need, Callisto as well, and other places around Jupiter. It's important to click on the eyeball and figure out the best places. You can see we've got a space station around Leader. It's now mining all those deposits from that surface. And Ganymede is another fantastic place. Europa, Io, well, they haven't got anything in them, so really I won't bother going to them. And let's just check out Venus. That's pretty near, and that's also got some good materials: aluminium, platinum, carbon, but unfortunately no iron, no copper, no carbon, and no titanium. So you really need at least 2 out of the big 3: iron, titanium, carbon, copper, and those are really what you need. The hydrogen and the methane is helpful, and the palladium and the platinum will be mega helpful later on in the game, but they're not helpful at all right now. Silver as well, we'll need that later on, it's not helpful right now. So Hyperion is there, and so Dion, Tethys, and so you can check out what everything contains with the eyeball, and then set off to those places, build another space station, activate another pod. You can see Titan shuttle there, so we're around Titan now. And what else are we going to get? Well, we're still mining around the asteroid belt, it looks like. And main element is aluminium. And sometimes it's good to have an automatic collecting computer, and that will automatically collect, just in the same way as you've seen before, things from the asteroid belt. And the AMAs mean it's a huge big boulder that we can get, and unfortunately there's no supply pod on our ship, so we can't activate that without a supply pod. But if we have one AMA and some mariners, it means they can activate that AMA, and that's a big catapult for collecting big things out of the asteroid belt. And that means now finally we've got an AMA, we can collect those big huge boulders that we saw earlier on. And now it's collecting palladium from one of those huge big boulders, and hopefully you can bring that back. It's not too effective, unfortunately, but unfortunately it is possible to mine out all the palladium in the asteroid belt, so you can have to start to move on to the bigger things eventually. So we've now got a few things built going around Jupiter, and of course let's speed up the time because it's a long game. We're looking at different places including Ganymede. So let's set off to Ganymede. We've got Ganymede orbital already built. This is Ganymede shuttle now, and deploying on the surface. Now let's return to the space station, collect our derricks, deploy them on the surface. So that's Ganymede now all set up as a colony, and our shuttle should now automatically collect those things from the surface and take those to the stations that you can see listed out now. And we've got still 4 of those interplanetary ships, and we've now completed phase 2 because we can only build a 5th space station in this game before the aliens start to attack us. So what we really want to do at this point in the game is to build up all the resources as humanly possible from all of the space stations that we've built. It doesn't matter if we complete a 5th space station, but as soon as we complete the 5th one, that's the only one that we can build from now on, otherwise the aliens will attack us. And it's important to get all the raw materials that we can at this point. Those include copper and carbon, and so let's spend lots of time with the war plan, otherwise known as the grind. And you can see our shuttles and our interplanetary spaceships are flying around backwards and forwards, picking things up and dropping things off between stations, which you can program them to do automatically. Moving forward in time, you can see 30,000 of all the main ones. Definitely you need 30,000 of the big four, and maybe 16,000 of the others. So we're getting near 24. It is a grind. It will take you maybe days to grind up to this effect, but unless you do the grind now, unfortunately, before the aliens attack, you're not going to survive it. So now that we've landed, we've now found somewhere, and we're now in orbit. We've now found an alien space station, and if we contact the aliens, if we've got a grapple, it's saying we need a grapple. So if you contact the aliens and you happen to have a grapple on board your IOS ship, then you can activate that and bring that back to Earth. And the contents of that grapple will then reveal something that we need. So let's trade with the aliens, and let's give them some methane I think they need. Let's also pick up a grapple as well. Let's return back to that spot. And now we can trade with the aliens that material and get whatever that was back from the grapple. That will actually give us a new item that we can research. That's the communication adapter, and now fitting that to our ship means from now on we can now communicate with the aliens. So by giving them some methane and swapping that for a grapple or whatever, we've now got a communications pod. So now if we fly back out there, and we're orbiting Jupiter at the moment, we'll fly back out there, hopefully we can now land, and now that we're in the docking bay, we can now communicate. Welcome to our space station. Would you like to trade some cargo? Our pleasure, sir. We shall give you hydrogen for methane. And that means that we can now start trading with the aliens. So there are, I think, maybe 1 or 2 of these alien stations dotted around our solar system. And so you're going to have to take them some hydrogen or something like that and trade with them. And having done that trade, you can take off again and land again, and it will say, do you want to trade again? So you just trade the same thing, hydrogen for methane, methane for hydrogen, take off again, land again, do the same thing. And once you've done that about maybe 10 times or something, it says, oh look, I've got a prototype, quickly grab it before, you know, they kill me. Alright, great. So it gives you a prototype weapon. We're in orbit around Jupiter at the moment, so let's set off back to Earth as quickly as we can before we get attacked. And we're under attack now in Jupiter, so we're going to have to fly very quickly out of here, fly out of that region and fly back to Earth very quickly. So from now on, that's the start of the war, and it gives us a bulletin to say, by the way, we've got a very strange transmission from somebody else and we can't make out the alien language. It's from another set of aliens, but we'll keep you posted on that. That's to give you the big mission at the end of the game. You're supposed to collect loads of alien artifacts from somewhere, and one of the alien artifacts is actually floating around Earth. So once you've decoded this, the first message will tell you to get a grapple going around Earth, pick that up, and then from there it will tell you where the next alien artifact can be discovered. For now, we've made contact with the aliens, and we've now hightailed it out of there. So what I'm going to do is save that up, because you're going to have to save this up. I've been playing this for 16 hours according to that so far, or whatever it was. Yep, 16 hours. So we've finally got to the war. That means we've got over 30,000 of all our materials in all of our stations, all of the best stuff, and that means so at this point we can wage war. Let's see what the secret item is in our grapple that's given us, and hopefully we are around Earth at this point, or at least the orbital station around Earth, and so we've collected that. What is it? It's a fusion laser. So let's get that. That's alien technology. We're going to need a fusion laser, and as soon as we invent the fusion laser, this is the start of the war. Hey you, stop inventing those lasers, otherwise we'll come around and kick your butt. So that's the start of the war, and just like War in Middle Earth that we saw, that's basically the storyline over from the end of this to the end of this playthrough we're going to be at the war stage, and for that we're going to need vessels, and we're going to need vessels kitted out for war. So let's do that. Let's put in an empty stock and we can equip that with all kinds of things, as you've seen, band-aids and everything else. We've equipped that with a DFCC at the moment, and we've got mere fuel. We can use tons and tons of it up. So let's see what we're actually doing at the moment, and you can see we are now replacing that with DFCC. And DFCC, as far as I know, it's all full. That's basically a control module for the war robots that we need to build, and that just means it's a store for the war robots. So let's fill it all up to the top, and now we'll have to build the war robots. So here we are at the fleet drones. We've managed to build 6 of them so far, and if you have the automatic computer set up on Earth and all of your space stations to automatically build war robots from now on, then they will be sent into orbit, and you can collect those now with the iOS. So we've got another message: human, all your transmissions to us are broke. We need communication fluently. The subject discuss with end. So we're getting there, we're getting a bit nearer. Now that we're at war, this second lot of aliens is making contact with us. So what we're doing, we're actually building like crazy all the war robots that we can, sending those into orbit, and we're using our 4 ships to collect those up. Unfortunately now Titan is under attack. That will now pop up that one of our ships is also attacked if they happen to be in area of transit to Titan. When a ship arrives, we can click on the activate to deploy whatever we've got in there. In this case we've built up 67 robots, but the aliens only had maybe 47 or whatever that was, and they've now legged it. So we've just built up enough forces to be able to protect Leader, and any orbital drones in the pool above Leader can now be added to that ship. Then you can see ships can even be blown up as well. I've unfortunately been killed by one of them, so it's imperative that you get as many robots as you can onto all of your ships as you can, and for that you're going to need the raw materials, and so all of your automatic computers from now on needs to be building them so that they can be pouring out. So for the rest of the game all we really need to do is to fly back to our bases, and we can use one of our ships to build another base somewhere else, and we're going to need at least 4 of them to protect the 4 or 5 bases that we've got automatically. So unfortunately when that happens they won't attack automatically, and look at that, craft destroyed. Unfortunately if you don't have too many robots, and if you leave them they'll just get blown up. So nothing is automatic in this game unless you have an automatic computer. You have to manually activate them on the scene, otherwise the enemy will just destroy all your ships. So that's learnt the hard way, you have to manually engage the enemy, and so that's one of the tips that you'll have to remember. And as long as you have more drones than the enemy, you can see we're automatically building them, and I think it's 200 that we can carry in any ship. We've got 200 in this ship, and the moon is absolutely safe. No aliens are going to ever attack the moon. They're never going to attack Earth either, so we don't need to defend Earth station or the moon station, but they will attack everything else like crazy. At this part of the game all you can hope for is that your crew is tip top and they are an ace commander, and you also have more ships than they do. Otherwise, well, you can see the PWR, power, strength or whatever it is, if we have double the enemy then that's great, but most of the time the enemy fights to the death. You can see the enemy's fighting all the way to the death. And at that point anything that we have remaining will stay with our ship, and again anything that's floating around above that orbital station having been manufactured, we can collect that. It does take ages to produce every pod, every robot. And you can see there is also a panic button now in this particular base. This is the enemy's base that we saw earlier on. We've now captured the enemy's base and there's a panic button. If we don't switch off that panic button, unfortunately what will happen is the base will blow up, and so from now on we'll have to make sure if we attack an enemy base to deactivate the panic button, otherwise we're not going to have a base. So we took over Jupiter base, but that's now blown up, and you can see we've now invented the panic button. We can check it out on our own bases and we can activate that on our own bases. As soon as we disconnect these two things, then the timer will start, and by connecting them again it means the timer will stop. So if we find another alien base floating around, it means if we attack it like this, first of all we're going to have to attack the fleet, and having attacked the fleet we'll then get access to the base. We can land at the base with the IOS because it's an orbital station, and having landed we'll have to deactivate the automatic self-destruct sequence. Phew, now that's our first enemy base captured, and we can, well, that's our IOS docked in there, but there's no shuttles, and those are the resources that it's got. Very interesting. It's got an automatic building computer. What else has it got? Those materials. It's got 6 rigs on the surface, and let's see now, it's not got any surface materials. Let's have a look at this. Look at this. It's actually got a beaming device, and using the beaming device we can now discover that, we can now research that and fit that to all our stations. You can see we can use this technology now to beam whatever materials that we've got to any destination, and any system, Sirius, Cygni, Procyon, Tau Ceti and Proxima and Barnard Star, and we can send them to any of the bases that we've got established around those systems. You can see we've got quite a few. So this is the automatic transfer computer. We can select all, and there's a button to select all, and there's a clear as well, and there's also a balance button as well, which we might see later on. You can see we can also transfer our IOS drones around, silica fuel, and all the usual periodic table things that we've got, and those are familiar with virtually every body that's floating around everywhere. So you can see in this station what I'm actually doing is selecting what we need, and you can see there are buttons there to switch to various things, and I'm just trying to work out how to do it. We can click on the Earth and then advanced time, and that will actually send things to the Earth. So the methanoids are too clever for comfort. Their storerooms are fitted with what appears to be matter transmitters. I assume our research team would love to research that. Yeah, I'm sure they would do. So let's let them do that. And they've researched an MTX. So we've now got the MTX, whatever that is. And so once we've researched that, that will automatically be fitted to whatever station is present on there. So it's there, it's automatically been built, it's already been there, so I'm just wondering where it is. Again, this is real-time footage, but that will actually appear in the station that we've just built it in. We've got a panic button there, but it's not activated in this particular station. So we've now got Earth. We can send things to Earth because a crater's appeared, and Earth is now flashing on the bottom because we've now got a receiver. And by advancing time, you can see that now everything's moving towards the Earth. Anything that floods in there is now being transmitted towards the Earth. Automatically it'll just beam it in there straight away, and so any materials this place gets, it's now beaming them from the surface, and it's also beaming them to its destination. So let's create that technology on the surface of planet Earth, and then we can beam everything up from there instead of using the shuttles. The shuttles are now redundant, and you can still use those, but it's faster to beam things off the surface. So we'll need to fit that technology to all of our stations and everything that we can from now on. And we've found somewhere else with some enemy on there. You can see the enemy in the bottom corner. We've got just as much power as they have, 1400 power. So some of these are touch and go. Sometimes you might have to reload from the save if you lose too many wars. But because the war's already started, the limit of 6 stations doesn't matter anymore, so let's build tons and tons of them. And we are certain that colonies have left in the solar system, although a few warships may remain. So there are no more. We finally got rid of the methanoids in this solar system, in the solar system, and that means that, well, they won't stop attacking, but that just means we get another space cutscene. Taking a quick look at the scores, the Amiga gave this 70%, even Amiga Joker gave this 71, User 25 gave this 82, Dato gave it 85, Amiga Action gave it 87, The One gave it 89, Amiga Force gave it 89, Amiga Power gave it 89, Pixel 81 gave this 90%, Generation 4 gave this 92%, and Svenska gave it 94, and the highest score goes to Amiga Format, who gave this 95%. And so you can see now, because we've killed all the aliens, it's now given us the technology to build an inter-system drive, so we can now move to our different systems, and of course we'll have to build that from scratch. And the systems, in this case, it has a different set of war robots. We have a system set of robots and also an inter-system set, and so the inter-system set can now only be fitted to our big inter-system ships. The interplanetary ships, the one that we've got at the moment, can only defend the local area, so that's what we've got going on. And now another thing will be developed, it's these star drones. So the big starships are a bit different. Now they can handle six, count them, different things, and all of these things in this case will have to be turned to war, and we'll have to pack those out with the star drones. That's the inter-system version of the war robots that we saw earlier on, and that means from now on we're going to have to manufacture star drones and war robots, not only to defend what we've got in this system against the methanoids who will come back and won't plant any more stations, but you can see we've built all the stations that are possible in the system everywhere we can. We've fitted all of those beaming devices to all the stations that we can, and we've now built 8, 9 it looks like different spaceships. And you can see the big spaceships are the separate flags over on the right. The big spaceships have now got one orbiting the moon, one orbiting the earth, and they're now getting full of star drones, so we can't use them until they're full of star drones, unfortunately. So that means some more grind, and that means building them, and that means we're going to start to run out of materials, particularly platinum and palladium, big time. So what I've actually done is rigged all of the beaming devices on all of the areas to beam in all of the materials that they can and share them between all of the spaceships, and that should mean that all the materials flow around all of them, and that means there should be enough raw materials in every one of our orbital stations in order to manufacture as many war robots as possible, and also to manufacture all of those star robots as well. So we've now got 2 big ships and 2 star robots full to the brim. So that's now a warship, and it gives us an ETA at the bottom of how long it's going to be. We've now developed that inter-system drive, so it's going to take quite some time at this point to fly there, but we will invent the hyperdrive a bit later on. As soon as you unlock something in this game, it will unlock something else. So now we've invented that, all we need to do is take over one system. In this case we're looking at Proxima because that's the nearest one. All we need to do is take over one system, and that will unlock the hyperdrive. So that means that navigating between all the different systems is now easier once that's been invented. So you can see we also need a different type of fuel as well, and that fuel will have to be invented, and that special fuel that we need, and yet again that requires raw materials. So if you haven't got those 30,000 in there from before the war started, and actually I'd recommend 40 or 50,000 if you really want to make sure, if you haven't got raw materials you're going to start running out of them by now. I can guarantee it, I did. And once you're attacking a new system and the enemy are attacking you, every 10 minutes you're going to have to be prepared for the enemy attacking you, and Venus and Titan and Callisto and Ganymede will all get attacked. So that means we need to resupply those and keep our hands full with those drones. That's precisely what I'm doing, keeping an eye on the local systems, and it will take forever and a day for all those things to actually get to their destination, and perhaps an hour or so in real time, and that's only the first voyage, hopefully, or the second voyage, and then after that it will be speeded up. So you can see all the relative materials advancing through time. You can see different materials of aluminium and all these various places that we've got. It's ferrying them from one place to another, taking them to Earth, and that is redistributing those. And I think that goes to Venus. Well, no, it goes to uranium first of all, then it goes to Callisto, then it goes to Ganymede, and then it looks like it goes to Titania, and then Oberon, and then Titania. And by the time it gets back to the others, it hasn't got any left, because all the places have used them all up. So you can do that, and that's once you've got the beaming devices. That's definitely something that I'd recommend. You've got automatic beaming devices now to bring things up from the surface. You don't have to do that anymore. No more shuttles, so you can kick out all those guys and retrain them up as commanders. And if you've got admirals by this point, you can send them off and send the admirals out to war. So this is us, Atlantic to Proximity. We've now docked with Atlantic, and one of our ships is under attack. And so let's see, you're going to have to defend this area against all these raiders. And let's switch off the self-destruct. Now that we're in somewhere else, we're around Proxima at the Atlantic orbital base. That has precious few little things in it. Let's balance those out and send those to Earth, and have that on a kind of a one-way trip. So if all those brown balance things are set up, it means it should divide it by 2 and send half of it to Earth and keep the other half. And if you're planning to invade other territories, it's probably a good idea to develop enough abilities to teleport enough materials here so that you can build the war robots, the big systems robots, and those robots will definitely be needed now by the big ships. And now you'll have to defend all of your places with the big ships now, and the Isle ships are only really needed around the Sol system, because you can't fly those to any other system. Although you can build them in different systems, of course, once you have those ships built and those materials. So it's forward thinking. And greetings, friend, we confirmed on our scanners that whatever. So you'll eventually get yourself the hyperdrive, and anybody that's returning back from another system, they should automatically rank up as well. And if they weren't admiral before, they should automatically rank up. So let's check out Baltic. If it's got an army there, we're probably going to get attacked. And for head of research, fascinating. Fascinating, Captain. We've been taking a closer look at the star drive design, and we reckon we can get things up to light speed. So we're going to do that, but it's going to take us ages. So CU Amiga said that this had very poor sound and a complete lack of depth, while Amiga Format said it had a gripping plot, it was awesomely playable, it was staggering stuff, and it was 10,000, well, at least 1,000 years better than Millennium 2.2. I think this is better than Millennium 2.2, although it is very grindy. You will have to grind things all the way up to the top. So it looks like we've got something else developed, and maybe some more fuel as well, a different type of fuel that we'll have to harvest now from now on if we want to do that. No idea, but as soon as you come back from a big long trip, everybody will rank up, and there you go. Look at that, we've now got the drive, and it takes seconds now to transfer everything from one place to another, and that's fantastic. So we're now building ourselves up, and I definitely recommend getting a fleet together, getting a new base together and building it up so that you can easily defend it. And that means that you can automatically activate things and have things moving around using teleports from now on. The only thing that you can't do automatically is when something's attacked, you'll have to defend it. So I've got lots of time for this game. It does take a long time, and it did take me over 24 hours to get anywhere near it, of which I was playing maybe 3 hours in a day. So it's got some nice graphical touches, and once you learn to navigate all these unlabeled buttons, it becomes very friendly, and I do like the sound of the shuttle moving up and down and things activating and things like that. So I do have a lot of time for this game. You can see we're now a warlord. We were an admiral before, and now warlord. So warlord means we've now finished this play guide and review, and we'll see you again sometime soon. Thank you.
I'm gonna send it to